Nobody expected this ending. Not like this. Not after everything Jake Paul built. Because this wasn't just another Jake Paul loss. This wasn't a close decision. This wasn't controversial judging. This was a heavyweight champion landing clean, and reality hitting harder than any punch Jake had ever taken. And now, after the Anthony Joshua fight, with his jaw broken, face wired shut, and recovery stretching into months, the fight world is reacting in a way we've never seen before. Not with memes, not with trash talk, but with warnings. Because for the first time in Jake Paul's boxing journey, people aren't debating whether he can fight. They're debating whether he should ever fight again. Today, we're breaking down how fighters, legends, analysts, and insiders reacted to Jake Paul potentially retiring from boxing after the Anthony Joshua loss. Why this fight changed everything, why the injury matters more than the knockout, and why this moment feels like the real crossroads of his entire career. And trust me, some of these reactions are brutal, while others might surprise you. Let's start where it all really began. Fight night. Jake Paul didn't walk into a normal boxing match. He walked into the heavyweight division. For years, Jake had built his career with precision, carefully chosen opponents, big names, controlled risk, gradual steps up. Whether you respected it or hated it, the strategy worked. But Anthony Joshua wasn't part of that strategy. This wasn't MMA crossover territory. This wasn't an aging legend. This was a two-time unified heavyweight champion, a man who has knocked out elite professionals in front of sold-out stadiums. And when the bell rang, you could immediately see the difference. Jake was lighter, shorter, less powerful. From the opening round, his goal wasn't to dominate, it was to survive. He moved constantly, circled the ring, clinched whenever Joshua got close. Some fans thought it was smart, others thought it was avoidance, but fighters watching knew exactly what was happening. Jake wasn't trying to win exchanges, he was trying to buy time, and that matters. Because when a fighter enters survival mode, it's only a matter of time before something goes wrong. And eventually, it did. Joshua didn't rush. He didn't force it. He didn't try to make a statement early. He waited. And when the opening came, he threw a clean right hand. Not wild, not reckless, just heavy. Jake went down. Then again. By the 6th round, the fight was over. But the real story didn't happen in the ring. It happened after. Jake Paul didn't go to the post-fight press conference. He didn't sit under the lights and talk about learning lessons. He didn't promise revenge. Instead, he drove himself to the hospital. And when news broke that his jaw was broken, fractured in multiple places, the reaction across the fight world was immediate. Because fighters understand one thing casual fans don't. A broken jaw isn't just pain, it's fear. It affects how you eat, how you sleep, how you breathe, how you react when punches come your way. And once it happens, it never truly leaves you. That's when fighters started speaking up. Some didn't hold back at all. One former boxer posted bluntly that Jake Paul's career was over, that the experiment had finally reached its end, and there was nothing left to prove. Another reaction simply said Jake should stop now before something worse happens. Cold, direct, no sympathy. But here's what's important. Those weren't trolls. Those were people who've been punched for a living. And then came the reactions that carried real weight. Michael Bisping, a former UFC champion who understands damage better than most, called Joshua's performance a masterclass. He broke down how Jake had nowhere to go, how the uppercuts and combinations took away his movement, and how the damage piled up fast. But Bisping didn't mock Jake, he warned him. He talked about how injuries like this aren't like broken hands or torn muscles. He explained that facial injuries stay with you mentally, that every punch becomes louder, scarier, heavier. And then he said something fighters instantly understood. Jake needs to rest. Not weeks, not a quick comeback, real recovery. Because rushing back after this kind of trauma is how careers and lives are shortened. That tone echoed across the boxing community. Duke McKenzie broke the fight down and pointed out something uncomfortable but obvious. Jake simply couldn't reach Joshua. Every time he threw, he had to lunge forward, jump in, overextend. And when you do that against a heavyweight with elite timing, you're asking to get hurt. McKenzie said the size mismatch wasn't just unfair, it was dangerous. That word kept coming up, dangerous. As the reactions kept rolling in, more boxers started weighing in. And this is where the tone really shifted, from criticism to concern. One of the loudest voices was Tony Bellew. Bellew didn't mock Jake. He didn't celebrate. Instead, he said something fighters instantly understood. He said heavyweight boxing is not a playground. It's not a space where confidence alone carries you through. When you step in with men who've lived their entire lives at that weight, every mistake gets punished harder, and the consequences last longer. Bellew pointed out that Jake's ambition was admirable, but ambition doesn't stop bone from breaking. And once your jaw goes like that, he said, the sport forces you to ask questions you can't ignore anymore. Bellew's message was clear. There's bravery, and then there's unnecessary risk, and that line is thin. Then came Carl Froch. Froch was blunt, as always. He said Jake Paul did well to last as long as he did, but that the fight never felt competitive. Froch explained that at no point did Joshua look threatened, worried, or forced into danger. He said the moment Jake started clinching heavily and circling non-stop, it stopped being about winning and became about survival. And then Froch dropped the line that made headlines. He said if Jake comes back and continues chasing bigger fighters, he's playing a dangerous game that ends one way, badly. No sugarcoating, no hype, just reality. Another former fighter said something that stuck. He said yes, the money was massive. Yes, anyone would take that payday, but money doesn't matter when your jaw snaps. And that's the difference between fans and fighters. Fans see numbers, fighters see consequences. Then came Jake's own words. Right after the fight, in the ring, Jake said he had fun. He said he loved the sport. He said he gave it everything. What he didn't say mattered more. He didn't call out another opponent. He didn't demand a rematch. He didn't say he'd be back stronger. That silence was deafening, and fighters noticed. Then the injury updates came out. Double jaw fracture, surgery, titanium plates, liquid diet. Jake posted photos of his x-rays, thanked the doctors, stayed upbeat, but again, no bravado. This wasn't the Jake Paul who lost to Tommy Fury and came back louder. This was reflective Jake. And that's when retirement talk stopped sounding like clickbait, because insiders started saying the conversations around Jake weren't about matchups, they were about health. They were about whether it was worth continuing. That's when analysts started laying out the reality. One analyst pointed out that Jake never once troubled Joshua, never had him hurt, never forced him backward. He said the fight wasn't competitive, it was a demonstration of how long Jake could last before physics caught up, and physics always wins. Another analyst explained why Joshua struggled early, not because Jake was dangerous, but because fighting someone awkward and inexperienced can be frustrating at first. Beginners don't follow patterns. They don't react predictably. They do weird things. But fundamentals eventually break chaos, and that's exactly what happened. That led to the debate about whether the fight was rigged, and that debate died instantly when the x-rays dropped. You don't fake broken jaws. The injury ended that conversation. Then something interesting happened. Clips resurfaced of Jake talking about going to the NFL, playing safety, running a 4.3, wanting to hit people and bring ratings. Some people laughed. Fighters didn't. They recognized it for what it was, a mental exit. Because when fighters start talking about different careers immediately after trauma, it's usually because they're processing loss and damage. It's human, but it doesn't mean it's realistic. What is realistic is this: Jake Paul has options, and fighters acknowledge that. Several analysts said if Jake retires now, it wouldn't be failure, it would be smart. He crossed over, he headlined global events, he changed how boxing markets itself. He fought real champions. Walking away now preserves everything he built. Coming back risks destroying it. Others said if Jake returns, it has to be completely different. No heavyweights, no massive size disadvantages, no experiments. Because the margin for error is gone. Once you suffer a jaw fracture like that, every punch carries memory. Every exchange carries hesitation, and hesitation in boxing gets you hurt. Some analysts pointed out the only realistic fights left are money fights, KSI, a Tommy Fury rematch, maybe exhibitions. But elite boxing? That door is closed. And that's not hate, that's honesty. Even analysts who respect Jake admitted the AJ fight was a deviation from his normal business model, and it exposed the ceiling. Then came the fan reactions. Some celebrated like it was a holiday. Others admitted it felt uncomfortable to watch. Because once a fight crosses into real damage, it stops being entertainment. Broken jaws aren't memes. They're life-changing injuries. And that's why this moment feels different. Jake Paul has lost before, but this time, he paid a physical price that fighters usually don't pay until much later in their careers. That changes everything. So now, Jake Paul sits at home recovering. No next fight announced, no trash talk, no timeline. And the fight world is reacting with something it's never given him before: concern. Because this wasn't just about losing, it was about how much he's willing to sacrifice. If Jake Paul retires now, he leaves boxing with his mystique intact. If he comes back, the risk doubles. And fighters know that ignoring moments like this is how careers end badly. So whether Jake Paul retires, pivots, or comes back one last time, one thing is undeniable. The Anthony Joshua fight didn't just knock him out, it forced him, and everyone watching, to finally confront the cost of chasing legacy in a sport that doesn't care who you are. And that's why the reactions weren't jokes, they were warnings. That's it for today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should Jake Paul retire now, or does he still have one more chapter left? Subscribe to Fight Fury for real boxing stories, raw reactions, and moments that change careers. Until next time.